Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome an award-winning literacy advocate who's been embraced by the writing community. He has a recurring book review segment on Good Day Sacramento. He hosts his own podcast, E-Train Talks, where he's interviewed many authors, and he does this all while not being far removed from his own bar mitzvah. Please help me welcome E-Train. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, great. Well, we have a lot to cover, but let's start a little bit with your background. So you're still really 13, right? I mean, you're only 13 still, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you first start having like a love for reading?
Well, I mean, I've loved reading for as long as I can remember. I think it all really started. My parents read to me. They tell me the day when I came home from the hospital, they first started reading to me. I mean, they just instilled that love of reading in me. Basically from the moment I was born, which is pretty wild to think about. And at some point when I was around 2.5, I told them I want to read on my own now.
You started reading from 2.5?
Yep, I started reading when I was 2.5, and I have not looked back since. I can't remember a time when I didn't love reading. I've always loved it. It's an escape. It's a big passion of mine. And, books have always been with me. I mean, you can just tell from this bookshelf behind me.
Is this your room?
This is my room.
Unbelievable. That's a lot of books.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of space. So, I mean, bed, bookshelf, that's about it.
What were the first books that you remember really loving?
That's a good question. I think Dr. Seuss books, I loved those. I think one of his books, I think it might have been Green Eggs and Ham, that might have been the first book that I read on my own. So his books, I also love this series called the Who Was series. I used to only read nonfiction for a lot of my life. When I was around...
Which series? The Who Was?
Who Was, yeah.
I interviewed the editor of that, actually.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. But yeah, I used to only read nonfiction for a few years, actually, before I got into fiction during COVID. So that was a series that is really connected with me, that I stay connected to. I sometimes look back at them. I do a lot of, I love trivia, so that's also a really great outlet to channel that.
Do you have any like favorite genres right now, presently?
That's a good question. I think I pretty much love all books except horror. But I'm getting into horror slowly. So, but I think I love a lot of genres.
You've been posting about some spooky books that you've been liking.
I have been. I mean, it's almost Halloween, so I got to get into that sort of spooky mood. At least at the time of recording, it's almost Halloween.
Right, yes.
And realistic fiction is a big favorite of mine. I think I like graphic novels as well. I've been getting into those. There are some really great ones coming out soon. And yeah, pretty much anything. I'll just get my hands on it and start reading. Mystery is also a favorite as well.
I always like the same type of things as you. Horror, I never really got into horror, except for then I started getting into horror comedy. And, funny, as long as it was funny, that I kind of liked it a little bit more. So you started doing reviews and videos about books that you love. So how did that all start? What made you decide to do it?
That's a good question. My reviews all started when I was actually assigned a school project to review every single book that I read. We had this, in fourth grade, we had this bookworm, and every time you reviewed a book that you read, the worm would grow bigger and bigger and longer until we hoped that it would go all the way around the room. And I believe it did. I can't necessarily recall, but that's when I really started reviewing books. And
were you far like ahead of every other kid there, first of all?
I don't like to brag, but I was a little bit ahead. And COVID hit, and that's when I realized that I wanted to continue to share reviews because I wanted to inspire more kids to read. Because COVID, it was a really tough time, and books really got me through it. There were escapes, as I mentioned earlier, and by reviewing books, I was able to share more recommendations with kids. And also, I joined virtual library book clubs, which are run by amazing librarians across the country. And I shared my reviews with them, with librarians, so they could get more books into the hands of kids in their communities. And that's eventually how authors sort of stumbled across what I was doing.
So wait, that was the first thing that you did, was you started doing videos of the reviews?
Yep. I started
posting them online?
I posted them online. They did not receive much, I guess, recognition. I didn't
What was
really...
the first one that you did first?
First one. I think I remember reading aloud books before I started reviewing them. But my first review was actually a Percy Jackson book, and
Okay.
it was one of the Heroes of Olympus books. Not super original, but I love the stories, and that was my first review. But I really got deeper into more lesser known books when I started going to library book clubs because librarians sort of have a pulse on like all the stories coming out by tons of incredible authors. So that's when I really got into connecting with new authors, connecting with new stories that I hadn't really heard of before.
So I remember seeing your video online. I was like, oh, this is really cool that this kid's doing this. I remember seeing. So how long did it take? You said you didn't get noticed at first. So how long did it take for you to start people seeing what you were doing?
It first actually started when a librarian that I had connected with shared my review of Starfish by Lisa Phipps.
Okay.
And Lisa Phipps, she shared that on her social media, but I didn't really receive recognition. I think this is also how I connected with a lot of, I don't know, you were sort of the editor of the coming of age
Right.
13 minute Christmas stories. And I posted a post asking if there were any authors who wanted to be interviewed on my podcast that I created. And that received tons of traction. I think a lot of people, well, yeah, a lot of people have seen it. And I received 70 responses from authors who wanted to be interviewed pretty much overnight. And
Wow.
yeah, it was mind-boggling because that was just an exponential growth that I really hadn't thought of as being possible.
So it's just like one
But
thing that really just propelled everything
yep.
forward.
And that's how I got pretty much interviews booked for the rest of the year. That was in 2022. So a couple of years ago, I've been kind of chugging along, continuing to do what I do. But that's how I got most like a lot of recognition, but it just kind of kept going up from there as I shared my love of stories with a wider audience. And I've also started giving books to kids, and that's a great way to connect and build.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. so,
Yeah.
so I was looking at your Twitter page. Now, are publishing houses sending you books to review? That's
Yeah.
incredible.
It is incredible. My to be read stack is way too large for me to handle right now. So I'm slowly kind of working my way through it, but it's been incredible receiving these stories
Wait,
and
how did
publishing
that
them.
start? How did houses did houses reach out to you? You reached out to them.
They reached out to me. I receive each week a few emails from publicists and publishers asking, "Oh, do you want to read this book? Do you want to review this book and review this author?" And it's still to this day, even though this has been going on for a couple of years, it still just blows my mind that all these big publishing houses are like, E-Train, read this book. And it makes my heart warm, makes my brain sometimes tired, but I love reading and I get to read all these news stories and also I receive a lot of ARCs, so I get to read books before they come out, which is super
Amazing.
cool.
It
And
is cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have something over like everyone else around you. That's really great. So I have to ask. I saw on your website also that you also like theater and musicals.
Yep.
You were in them. You sang in them.
Yep. I sang in a couple musicals. I always love participating in any plays that are going on at school, in my local community, and they're always a blast. My mom says that when I go on stage, I sort of come alive. And I think I agree with that because just I feel so alive. I feel like I'm in the right place when I start performing. And I mean, I heard that public speaking is the number one fear out of anybody in the world, or at least the United States, and it's not one of my fears.
So that's good. So what were some of the plays that you were in first of all?
They aren't necessarily well known, but one of them was called "We Will Rock You." It was a musical just all with Queen
Queen
songs.
songs. Yeah.
I'm a really big 80s music fan, 70s. That's really my jam. So, um, that was a really great experience, and I received a lead in that. I don't like bragging, but I received a lead.
You're
And I got
allowed to.
to,
You're allowed to know. So,
yeah, I got to sing. It was very fun, and I hope to do more in the future. I'm going to be in a play at my new school. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I am going to a new school for reasons related to anti-Semitism. I know you'll probably ask about that later.
so first of all, just do you have any favorite musicals now? What are your favorite musicals?
I like Better Nate Than Ever. That's one of my favorites. I got to see Wicked on Broadway, which is
Oh,
really it was a lot of fun. I went to New York about a year ago. I do not like flying, so that part wasn't very fun, but I got to see that musical and it was very loud. That kind of shocked me, but once you get into it, it's really fun.
Well, so you're such an avid reader, and I saw you were in San Diego, so I'm going to ask you about that too.
Yep.
So you're such an avid reader and a fan of books. So you also started doing a podcast where you've interviewed many authors. So how did the podcast itself start?
When I was homeschooled during fifth grade because of COVID, and my mom found this site called OutSchool. OutSchool has this is not a paid sponsorship. OutSchool, it has classes where you can learn pretty much anything you want to. You can learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Creative writing classes are on there as well. But there was one originally, so it was called a broadcasting and podcasting class. And originally, I wanted to learn how to be a broadcaster because that's
Mm.
one of my dreams when I grow up to be a sports broadcaster. I'm a huge sports fan, basketball, baseball, football, you name it. But I really got into podcasting at that point, and I created Eat Train Talks. It was supposed to be a sports podcast because that was the main idea of the class. But I thought, what if I created a book podcast? What if I talked about my favorite stories? I had so much to share, so many reviews that I had left over, even before I had started the podcast that I could share. And E-Train Talks, that was the creation of it, and it just sort of continued to blossom. And I started out just posting podcasts, but now I sort of combine a podcast and a YouTube channel and post um my episodes on both.
You going past the sports again. So you were at the Padres are your favorite team?
Um, hmm?
The
Sorry.
Padres? That's so you went to
Oh
a
no,
Padres game.
oh no, I'm not a Padres fan. I'm a Seattle sports fan. I live in Sacramento, but I love the Seahawks. I'm gonna be seeing a game. I'm gonna be going to Seattle to catch a game. I'm a Mariners fan. I wish the Supersonics still existed, but I'm a Kings fan. But so that's kind of the one non-outlier of my favorite team. Everybody that I know is like, oh, they're a 49ers fan, they're a San Francisco Giants fan. So I get into some pretty heated debates with a lot of people.
Oh, I saw you at the game. Yeah, I saw your pictures of it.
Yeah,
So
that was really cool as well because I haven't gone to many baseball games and that was a great atmosphere.
we're getting back to the podcast. So what's that been like for you? I mean, you have all these authors who not only know who you are, now that's got to be mind blowing for someone your age, but also that you've gotten to speak to so many authors. How's that been for you?
You would think that after all these podcasts that I've done that I wouldn't be nervous, but I always have a little bit of jitters beforehand. It's so much fun speaking with authors. I've been reading for as long as I can remember, and I just never thought it'd be possible to actually talk to the authors. I originally thought that they were just people that sort of like robots. I didn't necessarily think of them as real people.
Right.
And but then getting to talk with them, I've had so many connections. I've shared connections as well. Like um we were both at like a lot of authors like me are avid readers. That's a great connection. And also they're real people and I like to share that side of them. I like to ask them questions about their own personal lives, not just their books. And I get to learn a lot each time. I hope to become an author when I grow up. I have a lot of dreams, but that's a big one. And you know, I ask, "Oh, what's a piece of writing advice that you'd give everybody?" And I sort of just keep that in my back pocket.
So
So,
when you reach out to these authors, has it mostly been receptive? Is everyone like, sure, I'd be happy to do it and things like that?
recently, most of my interviews are actually them reaching out to me and also their
Really?
publicists reaching out to me. So it's not a lot of me reaching out to them. That's
That's
what
great.
originally how it started. That's how I
Mhm.
got a lot of my interviews in the first place. But now, I guess as people know who I am, which is still just mind blowing to me. But that's how I get a lot of interviews now. And it's a little bit easier because,
You don't have to
I
do
don't
the
have to be,
legwork.
oh, what if they say no? What if they don't want to? What if they don't know who I am? What if they don't like me? But yeah, that's how I get a lot of interviews. And most of the time I will say yes, but sometimes I can be really busy and especially because I still go to school. School can be a really big factor of sort of like not posting and not really sharing as much throughout the school year. But I still try to get as much done as possible. And
You also have
it's so much fun.
we have a book review segment, which is also amazing to me on Good Day Sacramento, right? So you
Yep,
still have that?
I do. It's
Huh?
gone on for, I think this was actually the book review from this past month was actually it marked 2 years of the segment, which is just wow.
How did that
Because
happen
I
to
grew up
begin with?
that began when, so I guess sort of like a flashback. sort of backstory to that is I visited a local bookstore in Sacramento called East Village Bookshop, and I told them about who I was, and they actually had a connection with Good Day Sacramento because they had gone to the bookstore when it first opened, and they connected me with that outlet. And they at first Good Day Sacramento interviewed me, and it was actually kind of funny because there was another broadcaster, or I guess host on Good Day Sacramento who also wanted to interview me, but they were a little bit late. So they were sort of fighting over me. No, they weren't, but
I'm
but
sure
I
they
asked
were.
him. His name was Cody Stark. That was the host who didn't get to interview me. But I asked him, hey, what if I came on at once a month? Or I mean, I didn't even know if it would be once a month. I was just thinking maybe a one-time thing. I asked, hey, what if, I mean, maybe there are kids watching, there are teachers, adults, parents watching. Do you think that they might, need some kid book recommendations? And I'd be happy to share some. And that's kind of how it all began. And I mean, they every time they always say like when they're leading into the segment, they're like, "Oh, he's gotten so big. Oh, he's gotten so tall." And so I've sort of grown up with them, and it's been a really great experience because I get to share my love of stories with a whole new audience.
First of all,
And
way to pitch yourself to a TV exec. That's really great. That's good move there. First,
yeah,
so
and
you got
recently I've also had the chance with the segment to go on the move and talk with authors and political sort of people in the political world and in
mhm.
Sacramento. So that's been great as well. And I don't know if I'm gonna get into politics in the future because that can be some pretty scary, pretty crazy stuff. But the connections are nice. I get to talk with some pretty cool
Well,
people.
I'll give some unsolicited advice. Stay away because you want people on both sides to be able to love your books in the future or whatever you decide to do in the future.
True. Yeah.
So you talked about being nervous on your podcast. Are you nervous on like coming onto TV? Because now you have like all these people
That's like a
watching.
whole new level of anxiety, a whole new level of nervousness. I always have some jitters. I always get a little bit nervous. And I mean, I become more comfortable. I've sort of kind of come out of a shell and I'm not as nervous, but it could still, I mean, I have to sort of set it in like I'm going to be on TV. So I've got to, be a little bit more professional, be a little bit like get to the point because the segments have to be really short, 2 minutes max. So I
Mhm.
have to get all these thoughts, all these book thoughts, out of my head in 2 minutes. So that can be a struggle. And sometimes I talk too fast, but we get it done and it's always a lot of fun.
But been the reception from your friends with all this? With you that you're appearing now, you on TV and you like people and know who you are.
Yeah, at my previous school, it was not great.
Really?
I received a lot of bullying because of what I do. You would think, oh my gosh, you're on TV, Ethan. You're on TV, E-Train. You're so cool. But no, a lot of bullying because I guess kids don't like reading nowadays, which is really sad to me because books are an amazing outlet to learn new things, to grow into better people. And I guess they're not reading because they aren't very nice people. So maybe if they dive into a book every once in a while, they'd learn a little bit of empathy. But I've not received a great reception. And
That's not.
I
I'm sorry.
hope,
First of all, I'm sorry that you dealt with that, but that's so. It's you probably chalk that up to jealousy more than
yeah,
uh, more than people not reading. But you
right.
you have you have collaborated, I saw, with a lot of other like book influencers. You did like panels with other teams. So how did that get started? You reached out to each other, or someone reached out did it all for you?
There was, well, for a lot of the panels, there's one sort of host who reaches out to all of us.
Mhm.
Most of the time, I haven't really met a lot of the people that I talk to, from a teen standpoint. And it's always really great to hear all these different perspectives of, different teens, kids my age, who are going out and sharing their story and, doing great things in other aspects besides stories. And I have organized a couple. I've organized teen author panels. So I
That's good.
round up a lot of different authors who are kids and they all get to share their tales, share their reading and writing stories, which is a lot of fun because I think that's one of my dreams to become a writer, as I mentioned, and I get to learn a little bit from them and we learn a lot from each other.
Well, I mean that's your group there. So you stay in contact with other teen book influencers?
Um, I try to, but it can be really tough. I think we're all pretty busy, with all the books that we receive, all, schoolwork as well. So I don't necessarily stay in contact with them as much as I'd like to, but if any of you are watching, then feel free to reach out and let's share some book love.
And you do school visits too?
Yep, I visited about 4 or 5 schools multiple times at a lot of the schools, and I've gone even as far as Chicago and in person to talk with the school. I talked to a whole school and then ran an assembly, which was amazing. It was actually a stage that was used in Home Alone 2, which is a little interesting tidbit. And I also visit a lot of schools virtually through Zoom. I can connect with classrooms and whole school environments. And I'm even going to be visiting a school in Sweden
Oh,
pretty soon.
wow.
And it's going to be very tough from a time standpoint because I might have to do it at like 11 o'clock at night, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, is that more intimidating or no, when just being in front of kids your own age, around your own age at least, speaking to
Yeah.
them as opposed to like adults on like TV things?
Yeah, it can be a lot more intimidating because I guess kids always have this sort of feeling inside of them like they want other people to like them. So they try to I mean, I personally try to um stay and be who I am, not try to change for other people, but sometimes I can find myself pretty scared because kids can be a lot more judging than adults, which
Yeah,
is
that's true.
it's it's very sad and very scary sometimes to talk in front of middle schoolers specifically because they can be pretty judging. But when I talk with younger kids, it's a really great experience. They're all super fun, super nice, and I hope that as I get older, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable and won't necessarily take it as much to heart if middle schoolers are a little bit mean. So it's great. I mean, I think it's so important to give books to kids and give these diverse stories to kids in need. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of doing what I do, just seeing the smiles on people's faces. Even if they don't really show it at first, I know that it really impacts them and leaves a big warmth in their heart.
Do kids come over to you after the presentations and talk to you about books themselves or like other readers?
Yeah, that's actually been one of my favorite parts, just sort of talking with them, communicating one-on-one, because I feel like that can be a little bit easier. It can be a bit scary, for them to speak up in class and say, "Oh, I read that book." So coming up afterwards, it can be really great, just sort of one-on-one, sharing experiences, and that's probably one of my favorite parts.
Well, I saw that you were an intern for the Sacramento Literacy Foundation. Did you apply to that or did they reach out to you?
Um, I think with a lot of internships, people have to apply and go through a very long process, but they actually reached out to me, and that was I mean, it was shocking because I love the work that they do. They give so many incredible books to kids, and I met with them actually when I was acknowledged as a nonprofit of distinction in Sacramento, and we were both there, and they were like, they'd seen me on social media apparently, and they asked, "Hey, is there any way you'd want to collaborate?" And I wasn't sure how that was gonna look, but then they asked me, "Hey, do you want to be an intern?" And I was just shocked because I know there's always it's usually a very long process. And a lot of paperwork that I don't like. I don't like paperwork, but I don't think adults like that either. Um, but it was great. I had the internship for a couple of months throughout the summer, and I created the social media posts. I promoted the work that they do and shined a light on all the great things that companies and organizations are doing to bring books to kids throughout Sacramento and throughout the world. So it was
Can you, for people who don't know, can you tell a little bit about the organization itself and what they do?
Absolutely. So Sacramento Literacy Foundation, they have been around for a while. They were originally under the Sacramento Public Libraries, sort of they were, I guess, a part of it, sort of like a foundation within a foundation. And eventually they sort of branched off and they give new and diverse books to kids in what is called the Promise Zone. There's a big Promise Zone area in Sacramento. Um, Areas where kids don't have access to books. I mean, in Sacramento, I believe so a lot of the tests that are run to see reading levels are done in third grade, and only 42% of third graders are actually at reading level currently, which is extremely sad, extremely scary. And um, the Sacramento Lucy Foundation, along with me and a lot of other organizations, we're all trying to work to change that and to give books. Because a lot of the kids, it's not that they don't want to read, it's that they don't have access to the resources. And so I give books, I give stories for young and old readers, and I'm hoping to make a big impact.
Oh, definitely think you are. So let's move on to some of the Jewish aspects. We said we're going to talk about that a little bit too. So first of all, you had your bar mitzvah. I remember you posting about it. Mazel tov
Yep.
with that. So
Thank you.
when did you have it?
I had it in January. So my birthday's in December, but my actual Jewish Hebrew birthday is in January. And it was a
What,
lot, it was a lot of work. A lot of
what
work.
did you do for it? Was there like themed at all, or
Um, so I had a party afterwards, but like I don't think there was really a big theme. I think the theme was mainly just from a color standpoint. I don't think that was really um I think the theme was just the amount of work that I had to put in. Just oh, E-Train did so much. And his brain is fried, but he still got it. And I actually for have done their bar mitzvahs at my specific congregation more than they usually do because I wanted to really just go out there and bring so much pride to my heritage because being Jewish, it's amazing. I mean, it can be scary at times, especially now, but I just take so much pride in my heritage and I wanted to go out there and show everybody I'm Jewish and I'm proud.
well, good. Well, first of all, I cannot believe that you did not have a book themed bar mitzvah. I'm
Oh,
like
oh,
shocked.
well, I did have so I got a cake for my party and it had so there were little figurine sort of things, different edible small versions of books. Some of my favorite books, they were all sort of made into cupcakes. There was like, oh, there's Starfish, there was Coming of Age, 13 My Name Mitzvah Stories, which Jonathan Rosen has a story in which you should all read.
I agree. No, thank you.
And a lot of my other favorite books. And so that was really cool. I don't know how how the bakery, I don't know what bakery, but I don't know how they pulled that off. It was incredible. It was also tasty as well. So I say that I devour books, but that time it was figuratively and literally.
Yes. Well, all right. Let's go into how you know. I saw you. You've been doing this for a while,
Mm.
and we're going to get into a little bit more serious things. So, like, how did October 7th hit you?
It hit me hard. Uh, I remember where I was when I heard what was going on. I do this thing called Quiz Bowl, which is sort of like a trivia, an academic decathlon sort of thing. I mean, it was Saturday, October 7th, and um I saw in a group chat with my friends that is like it said Israel is at war, and I didn't believe it at first. I thought they were joking. I thought it was just some sort of prank, but it was real. And I mean, it's just been so scary. And I think that the October 7th itself, it's incredibly it was incredibly frightening. But ever since then, it's been really scary to be a Jew. I mean, because of that, and not just because of that, but just in general, there's always been so much anti-Semitism that I've had
Yeah,
to deal with. But that sort of expanded it. And
that's what I was going
um,
to ask you about that. Have you been to Israel at all or no?
I haven't been to Israel, haven't made that aliyah yet, but my cousins have, and I hope one day that I can also make that leap. But yeah, it's just been my heart has been just with the hostages and with all the people who have just all the innocent people who have lost their lives, and I hope that the hostages will be brought back. I hope that it's just gonna end because I mean it hurts my heart. It's really scary.
Well, you did. Going back, you alluded to it earlier. So I remember what you posted about students getting on you with anti-Semitic things. Actually, first, can you tell me what happened?
Yeah. So it all started originally. I was in sixth grade and I mean, I'd already been bullied a lot, but then people found out I was Jewish. And I mean, I told them that I was Jewish. It wasn't like they just found out
Oh,
online because I'm typically pretty open about my religion. I'd previously gone to a Jewish day school, a Jewish day private school, for the first sort of 5 years of my education. So I hadn't really experienced much backlash related to my religion because everybody I was surrounded by was Jewish. Then I went to public school, and at first it was small. At first, but I mean, there's no really small form because all forms of anti-Semitism are bad and scary and hurtful and cruel. But at first, people asked me, "Oh, do you have a Jewish nose? I want to see for an experiment." I mean, that was just, I mean, that part alone was just like, what? What are you saying? But then people told me, go back to the gas chambers. People told me, um, I mean, my brain has sort of tried to block it out, so I sometimes can't even remember the things people said. But it's been bad. And also after October 7th, people sort of cornered me because I was Jewish. And um, I mean, related, it was all related to the October 7th conflict, and the conflict going on in the Middle East. So that was also really tough because, I'm just a kid in California. I didn't
Right.
have anything to do with it. That wasn't my doing. None of it was, but like, I mean, I'm sorry, it's hard to put it into words because it's sad. And I think that social media, kids have really sadly sort of um been brought to sort of believing these anti-Semitic things. There are a lot of posts that are just very, very cruel towards the Jewish people, and I think people sort of started to believe that, been sort of brought to believing that, whether it's through their own personal home lives or through discovering things online that aren't true, that aren't real. And it's just it's sad. I left my previous middle school.
You left
Yeah.
your school to because of it?
Yep. Another thing that people did was, so when I raised my hand to ask a question in class and or answer a question, I think, and somebody took a picture of that and they just like sort of edited it. It's like, so it sort of like made people think that I was doing a Hitler sign or something. They thought, or maybe,
Yeah, I
or
remember
they were
you
like,
posted that.
and they thought, or they were like saying that, oh, it makes me think of it makes them think of the Hitler sign, because I'm Jewish. And I mean, that was just like a final straw. I was so done with it. I was just tired. I felt like I had this need to sort of push through and like show them I'm stronger, that I don't care, but I do care what people have to say, and it does hurt. And so, I applied to go to a new school, and I was able to get in, and I got a big scholarship as well, which really helped. New private school, and it's been a lot better of an experience. And there's not hate because we're all just together, and there's so much more joy and so much more kindness.
It's not. Is it a Jewish school or it's just not a regular? It's just a regular school.
Um, just a regular school.
So you definitely saw a spike in all the to you and your friends and everything after October 7th with
Um,
anti-Semitic
Friends
incidents.
is it's different from a friend standpoint because I didn't know many Jewish people. There were only, I think, one or two Jewish people at my previous school. And so it was even more tough because I didn't really have anybody to stand by me, or for me to be able to stand by them, because there really was nobody. And it's so important, when you're experiencing hate, to have people by your side who support you. And I did have friends, but um I don't think they really sort of thought that they should put a stop to it. I don't think they really thought it was their
The
place.
school didn't do anything.
Mm-mm. And it was also really tough because I did give them a couple names, but they wanted more. And I think, I mean, I don't think they understand that if you're in middle school, and these kids that are bigger than you or stronger than you who could like genuinely beat you up, I don't, if like, they're only doing this to one person because there's only one Jewish kid. And so they know it's you who told on them or
Mm.
said what they were doing. So I mean, now, I asked my parents to like report what was happening to the ADL. Hopefully that'll do something about it. But it's also just good of sort of processing. I'm gonna actually write about my experiences hopefully in the future. So this is a little sneak peek, I guess.
Well, I am truly sorry that you had to experience that. It's, you're not alone. There are a lot of
Mhm.
others who've gone through the same thing, but it is good to talk about. And you might also want to reach out to other kids that going through the same thing, and together you talk, and it helps out to talk to others going through that.
Absolutely. And um I am in my synagogue and I'm with other Jewish kids, but what's really shocking to me is that they didn't even know what the Hitler sign was. They didn't even know what any of this stuff was because I guess in their specific schools, they hadn't experienced any hate. They didn't really know
Mhm.
what anti-Semitism was. I think they understood what it was because they'd heard what other people had gone through. But I think it kind of makes me feel a little bit more scared because I was really alone. Even in my personal Jewish community, adults and a lot of adults experience what I had personally gone through. And so I could connect with them. But a lot of the kids, they just didn't really understand. And that also really hurt because I felt alone. And I know that I'm not, though. I know that I'm not. But
It's
at
tough.
that moment, it was tough. It was scary.
No, again, I'm really sorry that you went through that, and hopefully things will be much better at your new place. But all right, so you and I have spoken before, and you talked about it a little bit now. You were working on a book. So are you still working on a book? Are you still writing actively now, or no?
I'm still actively writing. The previous book that you had sort of helped out with, that didn't really end up working out, unfortunately. But um I'm trying to write. I mean, I'm in creative writing classes. Actually a creative writing elective at my school. So that's a really great way to channel my thoughts and get word onto the page. I'm actually working on, I mean, I said it in like horror, but I'm actually working on some, I mean, horror sort of stuff. But also, I guess that's like how the tables have turned. Um, but yeah, that's what I've been working on. I've been working on a lot. It's hard, especially, I mean, I want to write about my experiences with anti-Semitism. I want to write about so many different things. And hopefully as I get older, my attention span will kind of channel back to normal. And hopefully I'll be able to get my thoughts out. And whether through writing, through public speaking, in any way, shape, or form, I want to be able to share my stories.
Well, between the writing and the blogging and the reviews and the TV series and your podcast, yeah, I think you can squeeze a little time for yourself in there also. So, what are you
Yeah.
working on next?
Like from a writing standpoint or just in
Any
general?
sample? Do you have anything like projects that you're working on for the?
I am working on a story called Florence is Dead. And I mean that from that title alone, yeah, you can tell it's kind of horror, but there's also a lot of hope in it and death. But hope, there's always hope. And I mean, I can't really say much more because I don't even think it's finished yet, but hopefully I can get to the ending and hopefully I mean, I've also tried different techniques like writing the ending first and then sort of like seeing what I can do with that from that standpoint. But yeah, I'm doing a lot, trying to write, trying to get my thoughts out, and hopefully by this time in 2 or 3 years, you'll see E-Train or Ethan or whatever name it's going to be used on a book cover. You never know.
I hope so. I'll just say there are many methods. People have different ways of doing things. I do it exactly like what you just said. I do the ending first, and then
Mhm.
try to figure out how did we get here. So that's the way it looks. So, and for people who don't know, and I'm sure most do, but for people who don't know that are just discovering you by watching this, how can people follow you on social media?
Well, people can follow me on pretty much all platforms. On Twitter, I am at etrainsworld, ETRAINSWORLD. Just have to spell that out.
Mhm.
And then on all other sites, I'm at eTrain Talks, ETRAINTALKS. You can also go to my website, etraintalks.com, etraintalks.org. Either one works. And that's where all my interviews are. That's where you could pretty much find anything and find out, oh, what's eTrain doing right now? eTrain is currently doing a lot. And you'll find out exactly what I'm doing and so much more if you can go to all the social media sites. And yeah, that's where you can find out what I'm doing, find out what I'm reading as well. Because if you're ever in the mood for a book recommendation, you know the place to look. It's
Well, I
eTrainTalks.org.
think your site is amazing. You have a lot of stuff on your site. I think you probably have a lot more than I do on my site, but so you have a lot of great things on your website. Where you can find all your interviews and podcasts, like you said. Uh, I think Thank first of all, thanks for coming on. It's been so much fun. I
Absolutely.
think you're doing an amazing job,
Thank you.
really, and you're pushing reading, and which is important, and you're connecting with a whole bunch of people. And I'm a fan of yours, looking at all the things
Thank
that you're doing all the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm a fan of yours as well. And I love what you're doing. I love the Jewish lens. Everybody should go subscribe and follow right now. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really grateful that we had this time to chat. To chat.
Right. Well, again, this has been the Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and again, a very special thanks to E-Train. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to the Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.